Ever been caught off guard by a betrayal that felt like a punch to the gut?
Hmm.
And then that question starts bubbling up. How far would you actually go to, set things right?
It's a powerful thought.
It is. And today we're diving headfirst into a really unforgettable story about exactly that deception and what comes after. We're talking about the saga of Lila.
Yes, we've got La Vengeance de Lila in front of us. It's a narrative that really pulls you into a pretty dark and fascinating journey.
Mm,
Our goal in this deep dive is, well, to trace Lila's path, how she goes from being someone deeply wronged to becoming the architect of her own kind of reckoning.
right.
We'll explore the complexities of the betrayal she faces and really dig into the idea of justice as it's shown in this really compelling story.
Absolutely. And we're going to fully immerse ourselves in Lila's experience first. We'll have a complete reading of the story.
Good plan.
And after that, we'll unpack the key themes, maybe shine a light on some of the really expressive English language used throughout.
Yeah, there's some great vocabulary in there.
Consider this your kind of express route to understanding a truly gripping narrative, maybe uncovering layers you might miss otherwise.
And it should be really helpful for those of you honing your English skills, too. Lots to learn.
Definitely. Okay, so first up, let's hear Lila's story in full.
The unveiling narrative. Clear, male voice reads the full story of La Vengeance de Lila as provided in the original outline.
Deep dive analysis, unpacking the layers.
Wow. That narrative really grabs you right from the start, doesn't it?
It really does. You feel that initial vulnerability of Lila's so strongly.
Yeah, and then you see this incredible, almost steely determination taking root.
It's a powerful portrayal of emotional transformation, definitely. And it immediately sparks some critical questions, about the motivations and the consequences.
Okay, so let's start there. Arthur's so-called love for Lila. Was that just a straightforward lie, you think? Or something more calculated?
Well, that's the first question, isn't it? When you really look at it, the power dynamics are quite stark.
How so?
Well, think about it. The significant age difference, for one.
Right.
He's her boss. She's the janitor. That employer-employee thing.
Mm-hmm.
And her background, being an orphan, it likely made her more, susceptible to kindness, maybe even desperate for it.
So it doesn't feel like just a simple lie then. It feels more like a deliberate effort to ensnare her.
Exactly. That power imbalance is key. Arthur held this position of authority. He used his age, his experience, probably his sophistication, to create this illusion, this sort of whirlwind romance.
Yeah, the story emphasizes how quick it was.
Right.
Yeah.
It didn't give Lila the time or, the space to really question his intentions or see any red flags.
So it has all the hallmarks of a predatory grooming process almost,
Yeah.
aimed at getting control, dependence, quickly.
That's a strong way to put it, but yeah, the elements seem to be there. It's all geared towards his ultimate goal.
Which brings us to the kidney transplant itself. It's presented as this act of generosity, this loving sacrifice. But in the context of everything else, it becomes something much, much darker. A symbol.
Absolutely. If you think about it in terms of exploitation, the transplant is a profound violation of Lila, of her bodily autonomy.
Yeah.
A deeply personal part of her is taken under completely false pretenses. There's no true informed consent there, is there?
No, not really. She thinks she's giving it freely out of love.
Exactly. It perverts this potential act of kindness into a transaction. Her physical self, her kidney, becomes a commodity for Arthur and his family.
Her willingness to give is just twisted and used against her. Horrifying.
It is.
And then we see Lila's transformation after this. It's remarkable, really. But it makes you wonder, was that capacity for such detailed, cold revenge something entirely new?
Or was it maybe an amplification of traits she already had?
Right. Like, was it always there, dormant?
It raises that fascinating point about how people respond to extreme adversity, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It seems unlikely that her ability to plan and execute something so complex just appeared out of thin air. Think about her early life. Facing loss, working hard just to survive as a janitor, to eke out a living, as the story says.
Right. That implies real struggle.
That probably instilled a fundamental resilience, determination.
So the betrayal didn't create the steel, maybe, but it forged it. sharpened it.
Exactly. It acted as a catalyst. It intensified those underlying traits, maybe redirected them. Trauma can be like a crucible sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And in Lila's case, it seems to have strengthened that inherent resilience, but shaped it into a tool for survival, even if that tool leads her down a morally, well, ambiguous path.
And speaking of the betrayal, it wasn't just Arthur acting alone,
No,
wasn't it?
not at all. And that's crucial.
His family was actively involved.
You're right. Their active complicity, their willingness to participate in discrediting her, concocting those baseless accusations.
Yeah, making things up to discredit her, ruin her name,
Right. And then expelling her, just thrusting her out after they got what they wanted.
kicking her out.
It shows they were fully aware. They approved of Arthur's manipulation.
They weren't just passive bystanders.
Not a chance. They actively contributed to her suffering. So this collective betrayal, it reinforces her view of them as this single unit that deserves retribution. It explains why her revenge targets all of them.
It makes sense. Okay, we need to just pause for a quick moment here. You are listening to Mastering Flawless English.
And if you're finding this deep dive into Lila's story insightful and enjoying our analysis, please do take a second to subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, and hit that like button, maybe share the video. It really helps YouTube get our content out to a wider audience, and we appreciate the support.
We really do. Okay, so back to Lila's journey.
Right. So she doesn't just seek revenge as the same Lila who was betrayed, does she? There's this significant shift in her identity.
Yeah, and that's compelling. This change, this transformation, it serves multiple purposes, I think.
Like what?
Well, on a practical level, adopting a new persona, shedding her old identity, getting rid of it, it was essential, wasn't it?
To avoid suspicion.
Exactly. To approach Arthur and his family without them recognizing her immediately. To carry out her intricate plans effectively, she had to arm herself with this new identity.
Makes sense. But you said multiple purposes.
Right. On a deeper psychological level, it allowed her to distance herself from the immense pain of her past.
Okay.
By shedding the identity of Lila, the victim, she could embody a new self, one capable of the strength, maybe even the ruthlessness needed for her mission.
It's like psychological self-preservation.
Precisely. A way to create a barrier against more emotional harm.
Yeah.
To steel herself for what she had to do.
And then the story introduces her son. How does that change things? It adds another layer of complexity, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It really complicates the moral landscape of her actions.
Also.
For Lila, her son becomes this primary driving force. Her pursuit of vengeance isn't just about her own suffering anymore.
It's about protecting him, securing his future.
Exactly. It adds this layer of fierce, maternal protectiveness. She needs to safeguard his future.
And for us, the audience, how does it affect how we see her?
Well, it adds a significant layer to our perception, I think. We might find ourselves feeling more empathetic towards a mother acting to protect her child. Even if we still question the morality of her methods, it makes her motivations perhaps more relatable, or at least understandable on some level.
So when we talk about Lila achieving revenge, does the story present this as a form of justice, or does it draw a line between them?
That's a great question. What does the narrative suggest about the difference between those two ideas?
Yeah.
If we think about justice, often it implies fairness, right? Rectifying a wrong within some kind of system, laws, or ethics. Lila's actions, while, understandable given the profound betrayal, they lean more towards vengeance, don't they?
Personal retribution.
Yeah, a personal act intended to make those who harmed her suffer in return. To settle the score, as the saying goes.
So the story explores what happens when someone feels completely failed by any normal system of justice.
I think so. Or when the harm is so deeply personal, so violating, that the desire for vengeance just becomes this all-consuming force. She wants them to atone for their treachery, to pay for it.
And whether that ultimately leads to true justice or just keeps a cycle of suffering going.
That's the central question the narrative leaves us wrestling with, I think. It doesn't give an easy answer.
Amidst all this darkness, though, there's that appearance of the kind couple. They feel incredibly significant.
Oh, definitely. They're more than just practical help.
They serve a purpose beyond just, giving her a place to stay.
Much more. They act as this crucial counterpoint to the cruelty Lila experienced from Arthur and his family.
Like a reminder that not everyone is awful.
Exactly. They represent the enduring capacity for human kindness, for empathy. They prevent the story from being completely bleak. They took her in, showed compassion when she was destitute.
And for Lila's journey.
They offer that safe haven. that space where healing and transformation can actually begin. Their compassion is like the seed from which her strength and ultimately her resolve for revenge can grow. It illuminated her darkest hour.
Hmm. The story ends with this idea of a new life for Lila and her son. But after everything she went through and everything she did, how realistic is that? A completely untroubled future.
That's a critical point to consider, isn't it? Because while the external threat, Arthur's family, might be gone, dismantled.
Right, she achieved her goal. Her revenge was consummated, completed.
Yes, but the psychological scars of that deep trauma and the weight of her own vengeful actions, they're likely to have a lasting impact. You don't just walk away from
Yeah.
that.
So the new life might be free from her past tormentors.
But inner peace could be much harder to find. She might always carry a sense of vigilance,
Yeah.
maybe a connection to the darkness she had to embrace to survive. It rendered her a changed woman.
Untroubled happiness feels maybe too simple a resolution.
Possibly. Maybe it's more about being unburdened from the past threat, allowing her to move forward, but not necessarily into pure sunshine. The memories might recede, but not vanish.
It's almost disturbing to think about the what-ifs. Like,
Ah.
what if the kidney transplant wasn't an option?
Hmm.
If Lila wasn't a match or Arthur's mother refused or something,
Hmm.
what would that tell us about Arthur's core motivation?
That hypothetical scenario really throws his primary motivation into sharp relief, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If the kidney wasn't in the picture, his sudden marriage, his declarations of love, professing his love, they'd have no purpose.
He wouldn't have needed her.
Exactly. He likely would have just discarded her much sooner, gotten rid of her, perhaps less dramatically, but once he realized she couldn't fulfill his actual fundamental need.
He'd have moved on.
Right. It just underscores the chillingly pragmatic, transactional nature of his pursuit. The kidney was the linchpin. His love was just the tool used to exploit her vulnerability and get it. It was perverted affection.
Wow. Okay, let's shift gears slightly.
Language-focused mastering phrasal verbs.
Because this story isn't just a gripping narrative, it's also, as you mentioned, a really rich resource for understanding some nuanced English.
Absolutely. It's packed with expressive language, especially phrasal verbs, which, can sometimes be tricky for learners.
They really can. They often have meanings you can't guess just from the individual words.
Right. And what's fascinating here is how these phrasal verbs really add to the emotional weight and the deeper meaning of Lila's story.
Okay, so let's maybe delve into some of them, explore them a bit.
Sounds good. You used one right there, delve into, meaning to explore something deeply.
Ah, yes, I did. Okay, well, you mentioned Arthur trying to exploit Lila. That's a key one. Using someone unfairly for your own gain.
Exactly. And related to his deception, we talked about how he tried to take someone in. That phrase, take someone in, means to deceive or trick them.
Which is precisely what he did with his false affection, trying to captivate her, completely capture her interest.
Yeah. And the result? Her world was completely shattered by the betrayal, broken into pieces emotionally and practically.
Devastating. And then, to survive, she had to forge a new identity, create something strong through a difficult process.
That required incredible strength. And looking ahead in the story, you might find yourself having to brace oneself for the dark turns. Prepare mentally for something unpleasant.
Definitely. Lila's ultimate goal becomes to settle the score. That's a common idiom, right? Meaning to get revenge for a past wrong.
Yes, exactly. And think about her early life. She had to endure so much hardship, patiently bear difficulties.
She had to navigate life alone, find her way through challenges.
And just to survive, she had to toil as a janitor, work really hard, and eke out a living, just barely manage financially.
That phrase, eke out, really emphasizes the struggle.
It does. Now think about Arthur's outward behavior. It could belie his true intentions, give a false impression.
While Lila, after her parents died, deeply yearned for kindness, had a strong longing for it.
And Arthur initially lavished her with attention, gave her lots of it, though insincerely, as we learn.
He professed his love, made that formal declaration, but it was hollow.
Right. Later, Lila had to build on the kindness from the couple, use it as a foundation to start healing and growing.
And eventually the opportunity for her revenge materialized. It became real, appeared.
While Arthur probably tried to rationalize his terrible actions to himself, tried to justify them.
Yeah, make excuses. Unlike Lila, who meticulously orchestrated her revenge, carefully arranged every detail.
That careful planning is key to her transformation. And her bond with the kind couple helps cement her ability to move forward, made that support strong.
Meanwhile, Arthur and his family deemed Lila expendable, considered her easily replaceable.
Which led them to turn on her so suddenly, become hostile.
They had to concoct that story about infidelity, invent a false explanation to discredit her, damage her reputation,
And then they expelled her, forced her out, thrust her out, pushed her out forcefully.
leaving her with no one to fall back on, no one to rely on for help.
She was utterly alone, and that despair threatened to engulf her, overwhelm her completely.
Until that kindness illuminated the darkness, brought hope. The couple took her in, welcomed her.
And as the years elapsed, passed by,
Lila began to metamorphose, undergo that huge transformation.
her inner strength started to burgeon, grow, and flourish.
She had to steel herself for the path ahead, mentally prepare.
Decided to shed her old identity, get rid of it, and cultivate a new one, develop it carefully.
She had to arm herself with that new persona, equip herself. Her goal was to transcend victimhood, rise above it.
And make them atone for their actions, make amends for stealing or purloining her life and happiness.
They inflicted so much pain on her, caused it deliberately,
Her plan was designed to dismantle their lives, break them down piece by piece.
which would eventually lead to their downfall, cause their ruin.
For her, it was a way to exorcise those demons, those painful memories, get rid of them.
And once her revenge was consummated, fully completed,
The past could finally begin to recede, fade away.
she now had a future to safeguard, to protect,
Her actions ultimately paved the way for that new life, created the possibility for it.
allowing her to feel unburdened,
Right.
relieved of that weight. It's amazing how many of these phrasal verbs capture the nuances.
It really shows how love was perverted, twisted from its purpose, and how the story encourages us to delve into these complex themes. It underscores, emphasizes human resilience.
And ultimately, her experiences render her or cause her to become a completely changed person. Outro. So we've journeyed through a really powerful story today. Profound betrayal, the complex allure of revenge, and the incredible capacity of the human spirit to transform, even after immense suffering.
Lila's story really forces you to think, doesn't it? About the nuances of justice, the lengths someone might go to reclaim what was taken.
Absolutely. And as we've explored, her narrative is also just a treasure trove of rich, expressive English vocabulary, so especially those phrasal verbs.
Yeah, linguistically fascinating. But what's truly thought-provoking, I think, is how this narrative makes us grapple with the intricacies of human motivation.
Right, and the consequences.
The far-reaching consequences of our actions, exactly. Lila's extreme journey highlights that fundamental human desire for agency, for control over one's life.
And the impact of both cruelty and unexpected kindness.
Both are incredibly powerful forces in this story.
It certainly leaves us with some weighty questions to ponder long after the story ends.
Definitely.
Like, to what extent does experiencing that kind of profound betrayal justify seeking personal vengeance? Especially when it clearly blurs the lines of right and wrong.
That's a tough one.
Or maybe, how does seeing that potential for profound personal transformation, even after terrible suffering, how does that reshape our understanding of what it means to be human, our resilience?
These are the kinds of questions that really resonate. They stick with you.
You do. We'd love to hear your own reflections on Lila's journey. What did you think? Please share your thoughts down in the comments below.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.